Hey everybody, welcome back to the studio. In today's video, I want to address another one of these areas in photography that there's so much misinformation about. We seem to have two camps in photography and even in life nowadays. And this area has the same thing. There's one camp that says you have to do it this way or else, and the other camp says you have to do it this way or else. What am I talking about? I'm talking about using manual focus. Now, let me start by going back. When I started photography, the only way you could get a picture in focus was to manually focus it. The way that it worked was like this. You had a focus ring on your lens. You would turn that focus ring until it was in focus. The way you told that, or you knew that it was in focus, was you had what was called a split prism viewfinder. You look through the viewfinder, and if there was something in the picture, let's say it was a tree, if the tree looked like this and it wasn't lined up, as you turn the focus ring, the tree would line up. When it was perfectly lined up, you knew it was in focus. The great thing was that you could tell how far you had to turn the ring just by how far out of focus it was. You could tell what direction you had to turn. There was so much information just by using that manual focus system that it was actually quite fast to manually focus. Then came autofocus lenses. And with autofocus lenses, the first autofocus lenses were so slow, so hit and miss, just not good at all, that manual focus continued along. Then more autofocus came out, and autofocus all of a sudden started to take over from manual focus. Now, the reason for this is twofold. One, the lenses got better. The communication between the lens and the camera got better. Everything just started to work better. So obviously, that's what took over. The second reason was camera manufacturers made it more difficult for you to manually focus. And the newer cameras, you don't even have a way of telling if it's in focus or how far out of focus it is until you hear a beep or the little green focus point lights up. That's it. When autofocus lenses first came out, the cameras that came out that were autofocus only or driven towards the autofocus had still the ability to change out the viewfinder to a split prism viewfinder. So you could go back to manual focus. Well, that's gone. I don't even know if you can get those split prism focusing screens anymore. So it makes manually focusing the lens a lot harder today. The other thing, on our lenses, we used to have what was called a distance scale. So I could set the distance scale to infinity, and I knew this lens would be focused on infinity. I could set it to 5 meters. I knew this lens was at 5 meters. I could set it at 5 feet. I knew this lens was at 5 feet. Almost all, if not all, the amateur lenses that you buy today do not have the distance scale on it. And I know that many of the pro lenses that are coming out don't have the distance scale. So once again, that makes it difficult to be able to use manual focus effectively. Now, it's sort of one of these things, progress overtook this, so that had to be left behind. Sad, but that's what's happened. Good news is that our lenses today are so good at autofocusing that really manual focus has become something that a lot of times you don't have to do. Now, I'm not saying never, but a lot of times you just don't have to do that. But there are times when using manual focus is actually a good thing. And there's a couple times when using manual focus is actually needed if you want to get a picture. And when are they? All right. So one of the times that I like using manual focus is if I've got somebody on, let's say, a swing, and the person's going back and forth, and I want to capture them. What I will do is I will pick a spot and I will focus on that spot. Then as the person is going down, I can take the picture and I know they'll be in focus. As a person's coming the other way and they hit that spot, I know they'll be in focus. Now, you're saying, but my autofocus camera does that. It does. It honestly does. But I find over the years of shooting pictures that in situations like this, and this isn't the only one, this is just the one I'm giving you an example of, but in a situation like this, I can get more keepers by doing it the way I've always done it. Sure, autofocus works. Sure, autofocus can track the subject, but I find this is more reliable. Likewise, when I used to do weddings, I always use manual focus. What would I do is I would set up what I would call my little mini wedding studio system. And I would pick a spot in the church. Sometimes I would even put tape on the carpet as the bride and the bridesmaids are coming down. And I would tell them when they saw that mark that they were to stop on that mark. I would have a camera already pre-focused on that spot. And then I would take their picture. Whether the church was dark, whether the church was bright, whether I got a good focus or I didn't get a good focus, it didn't make any difference because I had already pre-focused on that spot. And it worked beautifully. I stopped doing it as autofocus got better, but I was caught a few times in really dark churches and really dark ceremonies that my focus point was struggling. So that worked out perfectly. In a lot of other little things, I've used manual focus over the years, and I love it. Now, again, you don't need to use manual focus. It's not if you're a professional photographer, you have to use manual focus. Or if you're serious about photography, you have to use manual focus. But there's areas that it helps. Some areas you still need to use manual focus. Two I'm going to speak about specifically. There's a number of them, but these two specific. One is if you're doing lightning photography. If you're doing lightning photography, you're trying to capture a flash of lightning in record time. If you remove the ability for the camera to focus, everything happens quicker. The camera doesn't try to get a focus. The camera doesn't worry about that, and it just takes a picture. So what do? Is when I'm taking lightning pictures, I focus my lens to infinity, I take it off of autofocus, and then I go ahead and take my pictures. It works so much better. I get no hunting. I get no delay. It works beautifully. The other time that I always use manual focus is when I'm doing astrophotography, pictures of the stars, northern lights. I know that the stars aren't going to be close enough for my camera to worry about focusing on them. I know that the northern lights are not going to be close enough for my camera to focus on them. So why would I want my camera to try to capture a focus, especially when it's dark, especially when there's nothing for it to focus on? So I take my camera and I set it to manual focus. It works so much better. It doesn't lose that focus. It works all night long and I get better pictures. Now, you say, well, how do you do that? What do you use to do that? Well, here's the trick that I tell all my students. First, if your lens does happen to have a focus scale on it, what you do is you turn your focus to infinity. You then shut off the autofocus, put on manual focus, and then you take a piece of gaffer's tape and put over the focus ring so it doesn't move. Now, don't do this if your lens is still in autofocus mode because you will ruin your lens. Take this as a word of warning. I assume no responsibility if you do this. Make sure it's not trying to focus. The other thing is, when you tape it, use a good tape, not the sticky ooey gooey tape that's going to get into and jam the focus and not allow it to focus again. You want good tape to hold it. Once it's at infinity, you put it at infinity onto manual focus, put a piece of tape on it, and away you go. Easy. What happens if you don't have a focus scale? Well, what I always tell people is this. Find out what your maximum focusing distance is. On this camera here, or on this lens here, it's 5 meters. So anything past 5 meters is infinity. So I find something that's maybe a kilometer away, and I will have the camera on autofocus and I'll let it focus on that. That will be my infinity. Then I put it onto manual focus. Then I put a piece of tape over top of the focus ring so it doesn't move. Now, it may mean if you want to shoot northern lights or astrophotography or even lightning photography at night that you're going to have to do this before you get to where you're going or before it gets dark. Do it. It's so much easier. Camera will stop trying to focus. You'll get better pictures. Everything at infinity will be in focus, and away you go from there. Now, again, word of warning, check out to make sure that your camera's on manual focus. Don't use gummy tape, and be cautious when doing it. And make sure you put it back onto autofocus when you're done. after taking the tape off. So until next time, have a wonderful day. Get out there and take some amazing pictures. Put down in the comments down below if you ever use manual focus and when you use it. And I'll talk to you the next time I'm doing a video. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.